Hello, my name is George Paesua. I have a doctor's degree in philosophy at North Central University in San Diego, California. And I am a philosopher. Today we'll be discussing the topics with our special guests, Dorothy Nez and Jessica Decora. We'll be talking about our topics of American civil rights and segregation, Rosa Parks, and Martin Luther King Jr. Let's start off with the American civil rights. Our first question starting off. Do you believe that the use of discrimination and segregation helped create the world that we live in today?
I do believe that segregation had a huge part in our history and how we observe things and the people today. What about you, Dorothy?
I do believe that segregation still has an impact on people today, especially children.
I believe that with segregation and discrimination, it kind of set back people to more violence than it ever has before. But it also led to a couple positives throughout the process of it, where people will get to discover different cultures, different aspects of how they live their lives and how they contributed to one another. During the proclamation, especially the one that Abraham Lincoln created, with that, the Civil Rights Act and the movement, they all contribute to one another throughout history.
I would say the one thing they all have in common is desegregation, or getting rid of segregation.
Jessica?
I think that they all really were in common. The proclamation really helped realize that every human life is valuable, and even though it's still here today, I do believe that we have gone through the walls of segregation.
Okay, thank you. And that will complete our first part of this, but with the aftermath of the Civil War and everything, that's when the creation of segregation happened. I would say with Dorothy, as where you contributed to this topic, what made you research this topic? I would say
You stood up for people who couldn't really stand up for themselves, and inspired others to stand up for themselves as well.
Mm-hmm. And like with her being a member of the National Association of the Advancement of Colored People, what made her believe to join that group, I would say? What was she trying to represent as she went on to working with that group?
I'd say it's because we saw segregation in schools back then. They didn't get as good of an education as the white people did. So the people who grew up in those segregated schools didn't get as good of an education. But she might have wanted them to further their education and be more educated.
Thank you, Dorothy. And Jessica, I heard that you researched segregation for a while now. How did it, going through that process, how did that make you feel, just researching all of that?
Absolutely disgusted with how it happened.
Could you give me some examples of segregation that happened? Or what were some of the big topics of it?
Well, as Dorothy said, there was Rosa Parks, who was a part of the Montgomery bus boycott, where she refused to give her seating up for a white woman. And Colvin Collette, who experienced around the same thing. There was Jackie Robinson, who was the first African American to become a part of the Major League Baseball, and he probably received around the same kind of attention that Rosa Parks and Colvin received.
Mm-hmm. And now, coming back to the present times, what do you think about school segregation today?
So as I was researching school segregation, it said that in 1670 it was actually it was bad, of course, but it says that it's actually worse today, especially in the northeastern part of the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
which I find very interesting.
That's all the questions I have. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Actually, no, I don't think I do.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for coming to History Talks, and we'll see you guys in the upcoming show.
Thank you. Hi.
My first question starting off. Do you believe that the use of discrimination and segregation helped create the world that we live in today?
Hi, yes, I'm Jessica DeCoya, as he previously mentioned. I do believe that segregation had a huge part in our history and how we observe things and the people today.
Lord Jesus.
What about you, Dorothy?
Hi, my name's Dorothy, obviously. Anyways. Hi, my name's Dorothy, obviously. Anyways.
With that, the Civil Rights Act and the movement, did they all contribute to one another throughout history?
Can you repeat the question? Can you repeat the question? Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. Did the Proclamation, the Civil Rights Act, and movement all contribute to one another throughout history?
I would say yes, they contributed to each other.
Would you give me an example of why they all contributed to one another? So, like with we, with, so like with we, with, so like with we, with, like what made you research this topic? I would say.
I think it's because she stood for a lot of things. She stood for people who couldn't really stand up for themselves and inspired others to stand up for themselves.
And like with her being a member of the National Association of the Advancement of Colored People, like what made her believe to join that group, I would say.
I would say it's